It was a chilly evening in Milan, the kind of night when the city glowed with golden lights reflecting off the cobbled streets, the scent of freshly baked bread drifting from small cafes, and the murmur of people enjoying fine dinners in elegant restaurants, where the wealthy gathered to show off their power and prestige. And among these shining places of extravagance stood a luxurious five-star restaurant, famous for hosting billionaires, movie stars, and politicians. A place where one wrong move by a waiter could cost them their job, and one right gesture could change their entire destiny. And into this world stepped a poor young waitress named Sophia, a girl with tired eyes, yet a spark of unbroken spirit, her uniform slightly too big for her thin frame, her shoes worn at the edges and her heart pounding because tonight was her first evening shift in this prestigious place after months of begging the manager to give her a chance. Even though she had no background in fine dining, no fancy education, and certainly no experience dealing with billionaires who ordered meals in languages she barely understood. But Sophia carried something inside her, a secret gift, something even her colleagues didn't know. Fun, and something that would soon silence even the most arrogant customer who dared to underestimate her. She needed this job desperately because her mother was sick at home. The medicine bills were piling up, her younger brother hadn't been able to pay for his school books, and every cent Sophia earned from her shifts would go straight into keeping her family afloat. Yet even with all these burdens, she carried herself with quiet dignity, never complaining, only whispering prayers that one day her efforts would be rewarded. And it was on this very night that fate decided to test her courage in the most humiliating yet miraculous way. For as she carried a tray of sparkling glasses and neatly folded menus to a polished oak table reserved for a billionaire guest, a loud voice boomed across the room, dripping with mockery. She can't even read the menu. And every head turned towards Sophia as her hands froze mid-air. Her cheeks flushed red, and she realized the voice belonged to Alessandro Romano, a powerful billionaire investor known for his arrogance, sharp tongue, and ruthless ways of putting people down. He was seated in his custom-tailored suit, a diamond watch glistening on his wrist, surrounded by influential friends, all of whom chuckled cruelly as if Sophia were nothing more than entertainment for their evening, because she had hesitated for a moment while reading out the menu printed in elegant Italian cursive, a style hard to decipher at first glance, and Alessandro, always hungry for dominance, sneered at her as though she was a peasant trying to pretend she belonged in their world. And for a moment Sophia felt small, powerless, as the words dug into her like knives. But then something inside her stirred, a memory of her late grandmother who had raised her for a time, a proud Italian woman who had taught her the beauty of their language, who had whispered poems and sung songs in perfect Italian, instilling in Sophia a love for words that transcended social class. And though Sophia never had the chance to study abroad or show her knowledge, she had always been fluent. And now, with her pride on the line and her job at risk, she lifted her chin, placed the tray firmly on the table, and began to speak in flawless, melodic Italian, her words flowing like music, eloquent and confident, describing each dish on the menu in such detail that even the most expensive food critic would have been impressed. And the restaurant fell silent, Alessandro's arrogant smirk slipping from his face as Sophia's voice carried across the room, enchanting every guest as she painted pictures of handmade pasta, truffle risotto, and the chef's signature seafood linguine, speaking not just the names but their history, the regions they came from, the traditions behind. She couldn't afford formal education abroad. She had treasured the language like a gift of her heritage, and Alessandro listened quietly, something rare for a man who usually only spoke, and his companions too leaned in, realizing this girl was no ordinary waitress but someone carrying both struggle and pride. And when she finished, Alessandro did something that stunned the entire room. He stood up, raised his glass, and made a toast in her honor, declaring, To the girl who reminded me tonight that true class is not worn on the wrist but spoken from the heart. And the restaurant erupted in applause once again, this time louder, as Sophia felt her chest tighten with emotions she couldn't name, because the man who once mocked her was now praising her. And though she wanted to believe it was genuine, part of her feared it was just another game. Yet fate has a way of turning the cruelest moments into the most unexpected blessings. And so it was that Alessandro began visiting the restaurant more frequently, always choosing Sophia's section. Sometimes bringing investors, sometimes arriving alone, but every time testing her knowledge, not just of food, but of art, history and culture, and every time Sophia answered with honesty and grace, sometimes admitting when she didn't know something, but always eager to learn. And slowly Alessandro's arrogance began to melt, for he saw in her the strength he lacked, the purity of ambition without greed, and he began to wonder how many people like her existed, hidden in the shadows of poverty, dismissed by men like him who measured worth only in money. And one night after dinner, when the restaurant was nearly empty, he called Sophia to his table and said in a voice quieter than she'd ever heard, "You've made me realize something. Money can buy restaurants, mansions, cars, but it cannot buy the courage to stand tall when the world tries to crush you. And you have that courage, Sophia." And she looked at him, unsure if this was another test, but the sincerity in his eyes made her believe him. And then came the offer that would change her life forever, for Alessandro told her he wanted to sponsor her education, to send her to university, to give her the opportunity she deserved. And though her heart leapt with gratitude, her pride hesitated because she didn't want charity. She wanted to earn her way. And Alessandro, recognizing this, proposed a deal. She would work part-time for his company as a translator and cultural consultant, using her Italian skills and her growing knowledge, while studying with his financial support, thus making it not charity but partnership. And Sophia, after thinking of her mother's medicines and her brother's school books, finally accepted, tears filling her eyes as she thanked him, not with words, but with a determined smile that promised she would make this opportunity worth it. And from that moment began her transformation. No longer just a poor waitress, but a rising star who carried both humility and strength into every room she entered, silencing not just billionaires but the doubts of everyone who ever told her she couldn't succeed. And Alessandro too was transformed, for through her he rediscovered his humanity and the part of him that wealth had buried under pride, and he found himself protecting her, learning from her, and slowly, though neither dared to admit it, caring for her more deeply than either had expected. And as Sophia's journey unfolded, people across the city began to hear of her story. The waitress who silenced a billionaire with fluent Italian and turned her life around with courage. And tonight, as you finish listening to this chapter, remember this truth. Never underestimate yourself. Never allow others to define your worth. Because inside you lies a gift that may one day silence the loudest voices of doubt. And if you want to witness how Sophia's destiny continues, how her life intertwines with Alessandro's in ways neither of them could imagine, then hit subscribe button right now, because the next part of this journey will inspire you to believe in miracles born not of wealth, but of courage.